Hello and welcome to the Meg Method podcast. I am back with the legend, Mr. David Yim, aka Yimmy. How are you, my friend?
I'm really, really good.
Good.
Thanks, Meg. Starting the new year with a spring in my step.
Yes, and you just announced recently your big challenge. Am I right?
Yeah. I'm a sucker for punishment, Meg. What can I say? But thanks for asking about it.
You got the marathon bug bad, my friend.
I've got the marathon bug really bad. Last year, as you know, I ran all of the majors and I did a victory lap in London. I ran 7 marathons in 7 months. And then I came back and I was wondering what on earth I was going to do next. And our close friend, Divad, reminded me that there were actually 12 months in a year. So I thought, okay, well, why not? Let's try and do 12 marathons in 12 months.
Yes.
Starting with London 2024, all of the majors plus a few other races across the world in between, and finishing in London 2025. So that is my big challenge, all for Young Lives versus Cancer.
Yes.
As you know, it's our charity that we both raise money for. So I'm happy to be and excited to be doing this next big challenge.
I can't wait. And it's for the big 5-0 as well. So if you see Yimmy at any event this year, make sure you give him the birthday love. We're going to spread it across the year. You've earned it.
Landmark birthday. My team keep telling me it's my 40th birthday, Meg. What can I say?
Yeah, use it. Use it. Why not? So, yeah, and today, after big demand, lots of requests, we are here to do the Tokyo Marathon episode. So we're very excited. It's our 5th Marathon Major podcast episode. Thank you so much for everyone who's listened to all of the other ones. If you haven't and you're interested in doing one of those majors, please go back. We've got Tokyo we're doing today, and we have Boston still to come. But yeah, today is all about Tokyo Marathon. I am doing it this year for the first time. It'll be my 5th star, which I'm so excited about. So if anyone else is running it this year, please do let us know. Yimmy would love to. He's the best cheerleader you can have, so he'll cheer you on. And I'd love to see you there at the start line. And Yimmy, you did it last year, and you're also doing it in a year's time?
Year.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, next year.
You'll be doing it twice, and you did it last year.
Yeah, and that
first year pre-COVID.
That's it. I mean, I think it was the first year coming. Nobody was sure whether or not the race was going to happen at one stage, given the COVID year. They cancelled it last minute, and nobody got a refund. And a lot of people had sadly already made, and frustratingly already made their travel plans to get out there. But last year, it did happen. I was fairly confident that and I will talk a little bit about this, there was a lot of COVID restrictions that we had to comply with, but at the same time, they did put on a really, really good event. And I would say that I am sharing my views on this, Meg, to help you as much as possible.
Yes,
as at the date of recording, we are less than 8 weeks away from the Tokyo Marathon. You must be feeling super excited about this.
Oh, I'm buzzing. Yeah, I'm really, really buzzing. We'll talk a little bit about entry and how you actually can get into Tokyo Marathon. But spoiler alert, I was very lucky in that I got into the ballot first time. Now, actually, a little truth was last year I knew Yimmy was entering. I was going to enter as well. And I actually filled out all of the form and I was literally ticking away till midnight. But I chickened out because of all of the strict, post-COVID rules. I was like, oh no, I think I'd be a little bit too stressed to do it. So all respect for Yimmy for going out there, and he still had a great experience, which he's going to talk about. So I've actually waited a year to enter, but first time entering, I got the ballot. It is a 37,500 runner race, but 320,000 people enter that ballot. I honestly didn't even know that many people entered for that few places. So I consider myself very lucky. So yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing to be out there, and I hope anyone listening is too.
Odds are crazy getting into that race now. And with the sort of backlog from the COVID years as well. I mean, that's why they had the world record there for the highest number of 6-star finishers in any race last year when I ran it, because they obviously had the 2020, 2021 fields that they hadn't actually caught up on. So it is the smallest field of all of the majors currently. It's the newest one of all of the majors. And as I said, it's a lot of the experience I'll share today was based on my own experiences last year. But I think the one thing that I would say to anyone listening is you really need to read the rules this time round and check what's changed. But if the worst case scenarios, they'll have some hangover from last time, and the best thing you can do is be prepared for it mentally. Yeah. You'll deal with it on race day, because we're all athletes who run these things. Yeah. We do all our training. We mentally prepare for these things, and it'll be absolutely fine. I would just say, just don't overthink it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Japanese culture is super welcoming, super polite, but they're also very efficient. So just do as they ask, go with it, and it is at the end of the day all to give you the best race experience. But 2024, we're very lucky. A lot of the rules from last year post-COVID have lifted, and so I think I think everyone is seeing that as the first year really that it's back properly, and very exciting to do so. So following that, I mentioned a little bit about the Japanese culture and what to expect. Yumi, having done the race, what are your 3 words that you would use to sum up this race?
So, we always do this. If I have the 3 words, then a couple of our races, we've been bang on the same. I'd be interested to see what your words are when you've done this marathon. Yeah. My 3 words to describe the Tokyo Marathon are clean, quiet, and compliant.
You know what? They're quite good words. I love the fact that you got quiet in there, because when I asked Jimmy about his experience at the Tokyo Marathon, do you remember what he said? He said it's like a silent disco. He said everyone's turned up to party, but no one's making a sound. And I was like, do you know what? That actually sounds fantastic. I can't wait.
it is the weirdest thing. I mean, let's start with an overview. It's a point-to-point race, right? So it starts in one place, it finishes another place. It starts in Shinjuku at the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building. It finishes near Tokyo Station, which actually geographically isn't that far away, but it does loop around, which we'll talk about. The other things I would just say, in opening remarks is it's the cleanest course you will ever run. Yeah. It is so clean, you could almost eat your dinner off the road surface. It's that clean.
Yeah, no littering in Japan, which we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that. It's also one of the most congested courses you'll ever run.
Heard this. Yeah.
Yeah, which I'll talk about when I talk about the start line. And my other thing is that Tokyo has one of the most complex, but the cleanest, most efficient transportation system of anywhere I've been to. I mean, one of the stations I went to had like 120 different lines going through it. Oh, Lord. But it all worked. And I don't get freaked out by that. Yeah. But it is the most easy to navigate with a little bit of technology, which we'll go into. So it's dead easy. And overall, it was a great experience for me, because I met some incredibly good people who I'm still in contact with now. We're on a WhatsApp group.
That's what it's all about.
We've done different things, but, we've all kept in contact. You make such good friends out there, because, we talk about the language situation a bit later. You do stick to the people who can speak your language at the end of the day. And that's a big factor. So it's a great race. It's a great event. Let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tokyo Marathon 2024. It's on Sunday, the 3rd of March. Like I said, 37,500 runners. And then an extra 500 runners are going to be doing a 10 km race. It's a 7-hour race, but that is from the gun time, not the chip time. So it starts at 9:10 in the morning, and then it finishes at 4:10. So no matter what time you cross that start line, that is the time the race is finishing. Now, I've had a few. So technically what they say, for you to be able to apply for Tokyo Marathon, they require you to be able to run 6.5 hours. So that's approximately 50-minute per mile pace. But they do have quite strict cut-off checkpoints. Now, I've had quite a few people message me to say that's their concern regarding Tokyo and just asking various coaching advice. What would your response to that be, Yemi, having done the race? Because I know these things on paper sound very scary.
I'm going to be really, really honest with you in terms of what I experienced, what I saw. I think that if you can run a marathon comfortably in 6 hours, do not even stress about it.
Yeah.
Do not even stress about it. In fact, I probably spent a little bit too much time. I didn't stress too much, but I still probably spent too much time stressing about the checkpoints and the cutoff times. But actually, once I got going, and the course is it's a very kind course, which we'll go into. But it actually, you didn't have to worry about it at all if you can comfortably run a 6-hour marathon. And even if you're on the verge of 6.5 hours, I would say just try to be at the front of your start wave. And the way that the start actually happens, it's a rolling start. They can get 37,500 runners over the start line in less than 1 hour. New York City Marathon, pay attention, right? You know, it doesn't take 4 hours to get 50,000 runners across the line. It takes it takes Tokyo Marathon, less than an hour to get all the runners across the start line.
Yeah.
So, and as you said, Meg, you're absolutely right. The chasers, the chasing group, the back markers, we called them the balloon guys. Everyone there called them the balloon guys. They carried these little balloons.
It's same in Rome, by the way. You'll get to experience Rome. We won't sidetrack too much, but Rome, my description of that would be Mario Kart.
It was the whole thing's like a video game, right, Meg? There are 8 checkpoints, and if you want, I can share with you the times for the checkpoints, and you can put them in the show notes from last year's guide. Mm-hmm. I should imagine that actually it's going to be fairly similar this time round, but I actually do have the 8 checkpoints.
Wonderful.
And there's a sign for each one at the side saying this checkpoint will close now at whatever time. And now, do you remember in the sort of 80s and 90s going to arcades and you played those driving games where you sat in a car and I think it was called Outrun or something.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And you had to drive in this course, and you had to get to a checkpoint in order to continue, to get more time so you could continue. It's a bit like that, right? There are 8 checkpoints. You've got to get to the checkpoints before the certain time. If you run out of time, they close the course.
Yep. And I've got them up here for this year, so I'll put those in the show notes.
Yeah, do that and it won't mean there's one at sort of like 4.9, one at 11.1, one at 15.4, 20.9, 24.7, 29.2, 33.5, 37.8, and then obviously the finish line. So they're the sort of like locations of each of those, and there's a time. You've got to get across those checkpoints before that closing time. And then what happens is, and I saw this when I was running on the course, when you're running in the switchback, when they get to that point, they literally pull these cones across the course and the course is closed.
Yeah.
So if you don't get to the checkpoint, then you'll get pulled off the course. If the balloon guys catch you, then you get pulled off the course.
Real life Mario Kart.
It is real life Mario Kart. So be aware of it, but don't overthink it would be my advice.
Yeah, absolutely. As like Yemi said, if you can run comfortably 6 hours, don't even let it enter your brain. Don't worry. If you're over that, again, knowledge is key. You know that now. You have from this recording, it'll be a little less when it comes out, but we're at around the 8-week mark now. Before that, I say slow and steady does win the race, in that's where your pacing is going to be key. And it should be in all marathons, but if you can keep a steady, consistent pace, that means don't panic and go guns blazing at the start. Just exactly like Yumi said, make sure if you can be at the start of your pen if you can. If you're worried about the time, try and be the start of your pen, so you're crossing that finish line and start line a little bit quicker. and then just pace yourself well. Keep to a sensible pace that you can keep up and just be consistent with, and you'll be all right.
Excellent.
So, yeah, that's the cutoffs. As we wanted to start with that because we knew a lot of people were starting to get concerned with that. You can give that a Google as well. It's on the Tokyo Marathon Participants Guideline, but I'll also put that in the show notes. Now, getting a place. So hopefully, if you're listening to this, you've got a place for 2024. But I know a lot of people listen to this podcast because they're wanting to do it in the future and be inspired. Now, I was extremely lucky, as I mentioned, to get one of those ballot places, which are limited for international runners. Like I said, 320,000 runners enter for 37,500 places. It was $160. That's £125 plus I paid $10 for bag drop, which you do pay this year and you have to do in advance. That's something to note. So I'd say that's about mid-price for the majors. Yeah. It's not too bad. Yumi, you got yours through international sports tours, didn't you? Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the three ways you get into this race: one, ballot; two, sports tours, tour company; and three, you do the charity route, which we can talk about. Yeah. But it was probably the most expensive one because the hotels are not cheap.
Yes.
In Tokyo, it's probably the most expensive race to get to, and two, when you're staying in Tokyo as well, in terms of accommodation. You can eat really, really cheaply while you're in Tokyo as well, which I'll talk about later. Yeah. But it was quite expensive to actually do that. The packages were the most expensive of the six majors. Not discounting London, of course, because I never took a tour package to London because it's obviously my home race and I always do it for charity. But the other way to get in, of course, is charity, which is a very, very strange sort of reverse auction approach.
It is, but actually you are looking at the same, if not a little bit cheaper, with tours potentially doing the charity option as well, but it's not as straightforward as some of the other charity places necessarily.
Well, it depends. I mean, the charity places sort of open in June time, and you basically have to go onto the Tokyo Marathon website, and this is just from memory. Yeah. You go onto the Tokyo website, and there are some certain charities, and you pick the charity you want to, and you can only apply to one of them. I think if you apply to multiple, you get your bid rejected.
Oh wow!
And what you do is you bid a minimum of 100,000 yen, which is about £800. Mm-hmm. Now, if there are multiple people who all bid the minimum, the people who bid the most will get a place. Right. And what you do is you then have to pay that money up front and then backfill the fundraise later. Okay. So it's a very, very no other race does it this way. So there's not like a commitment like London. You say, I'm going to raise £2,000 and therefore I'm going to spend the next few months raising the money. In Tokyo, you make the payment up front and then you fundraise afterwards.
Right.
But you've got to be
putting money where your mouth is.
You've got to, as right up front, and strategically, you've got to be quite strategic about how you bid as well. So,
I was going to say, you've got to hope everyone's been a little cheap this year because that could get expensive.
Do you know what? Last year, everyone who bid for a charity got a place because they were undersubscribed.
Right.
This year, it was oversubscribed, and there was a lot of chatter on some of the Facebook groups that I'm on about how people were gamifying it and saying, some people who said, look, you know what? I can afford £1,500 straight off the bat. That's nearly 200,000 yen. I'm just going to bid that. And they bid double the minimum. There will be some people who bid the minimum and then, they were surprised that they didn't get a place. So that's one thing to look out for. And nobody else does it this way.
Yeah, it's a very interesting there. So arguably up there probably with Boston, if not more so, one of the hardest of the majors to get into. Like Yumi said, that's why a lot of people, it's their last one. So about mid price for majors in terms of the ticket, your entry. But actually, I agree with Yumi, they're most expensive. So especially if you're coming from Europe, book early. So if you're thinking about doing it in the future year, book early for that hotel, book early for flights as you can. The transport links are pretty good from the airports, I see, and also looking ahead, I would say, for travel and just having an idea how you're getting from the airport for places, because I hear taxis are quite high cost.
They're not bad, actually. They're not as bad as they're not as bad as London's. It's any big city sort of cost to get in. I mean, if you fly, there are two airports. There's Narita and Haneda, and if you go to Haneda, it's actually a lot closer. You'll be in the main city within half an hour or so.
Yeah, I'm going to
and
Haneda.
It wasn't stupidly expensive to actually go down that route. You can get the train in. I mean, the one thing I would say is before you even travel out there, before you even get to like the expo and the hotel and all that sort of stuff, my top tip would be book early. Now is a good time, because if you haven't done it already, because the sales are on.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind flying via somewhere else, I appreciate it is a really, really long journey. I mean, I flew direct and it was 13 and a half hours.
Yeah.
I know some people who took even longer than that because they flew via somewhere else. But my top tip, Tokyo's currently 9 hours ahead of us.
Yeah.
And from all of my sort of business travel, flying west to east is the worst in terms of jet lag, because you lose time. If you're flying to New York, say, 5 hours behind us, you get there, you basically having a late night, basically. You gain a bit of time, you have a late night, you go to bed tired and you wake up, and actually you can get over the jet lag pretty quickly. Going the other way, west to east, is always bad. And I would say just be really strategic about how much you sleep on that plane.
Yeah.
I actually set myself an alarm clock. And even though I had I was pretty comfortable on the plane, and I thought, I'm sleeping really well here, I set an alarm clock that woke me up after 5.5 hours of sleep, because I landed at 5 o'clock in the evening. If I had slept a good 7 or 8 hours and slept on through, I would have been wide awake when it would be bedtime, right? Because I've lost time. I've lost 9 hours worth of time effectively.
Yeah.
So do be strategic about how much you sleep on that plane. So when you land, you might land slightly tired, but that means you go to bed and you reset your body clock. And I would strongly recommend, hopefully you've got your flights already, getting out there Wednesday or latest Thursday before the race. Give yourself some time to actually settle into that time zone.
Yeah, excellent advice. That's what I was going to add as well. Obviously, it's a privilege if you can go for longer, but if you can, I think I'm landing on the Tuesday just to give myself that extra bit of time. Also, just to sightsee in Tokyo as well. But it's going to help you massively, because that is one of the downsides coming from Europe to Tokyo is that time difference. So excellent advice right there. So next up, the Expo and packet pickup. So the Expo for Tokyo is at Big Sight South Exhibition Halls. And that is from February the 29th, which is the Thursday, and that is till the Friday. And so the pickup, that's the hours I've given you, because that's the most important bit. That is 10 a.m. till 8:30. From Thursday, Friday, and then on Saturday, it closes a bit earlier at 5:30. Do not forget to take your passport or driving license as your ID. You must pick up your own packet, and you cannot pick it up on the day. What else would you like to add about the Expo, Yumi? Because I know you've got some excellent anecdotes about your experience here.
The Expo is in this. The Expo is in this wicked building. You go there and it's just super impressive. It's like, Tokyo, modern Tokyo building is super impressive to look at. It's all glass and steel, and you can see it's a convention center. It blows the Excel Center out of the water in terms of what it looks like. It has its own metro station as well. I think, if you're staying anywhere close to a metro station, you can easily navigate. We'll talk about the navigation. The hours you said are absolutely right. Just be prepared for a lot of queuing.
Yeah.
The Japanese, a bit like the Brits, they love a queue.
We love a queue, but we might even be beaten here. And Brits love a queue. We know how to queue. So hopefully we've been practicing our whole lives as Brits for queuing.
You know
so
what?
we should be well prepared.
I mean, last year there was the added thing, and I'm hopefully they don't have it this year. So last year you had to queue up and you had to take some health app monitoring app, and they had to check that first. Then you had to get in another queue for something else, and then finally you get in a queue for the actual bib pickup. I think that the health check app stuff's gone, hopefully, so it shouldn't take as long. But it does get busy. It's almost the expo's on 2 levels. So you walk in, and first of all, there's a section that's only for runners.
Yeah.
And they were very restrictive about it due to COVID last year, so they didn't just allow anybody in. There was only one section. It was only for runners, and you had to queue up, and you have to go to a specific desk to get your bib. So it's not like Berlin or London. It's a bit like Chicago in a way, and Boston, where you actually have to go to a specific desk according to your race number, and then you'll get your bag if you've got the bag drop option.
Yep.
You'll get your bib, which I've got to say is I'll drop you I framed all my my bibs, Meg. And normally I measure them so you know what size it is.
This is your opportunity.
I'm sorry, I framed it. It's on my wall. So it is.
Pull it off the wall.
It is the smallest bib. It is the smallest bib of all of the 6 majors. So it will fit. If you're used to running other races, about the size of the Chicago bib, I would say. It is the smallest bib. You'll also get your pins, but you'll also get this timing chip.
Boop, boop.
Sorry to say it. Now, I'm hoping that all of the majors will end up using the timing strips that they put on the back of the bibs.
Yeah.
But Tokyo Marathon 2023 certainly still had it. They gave you a shoe tag. They did give you the little yellow suit ties. I always say take spares with you, the little cable tie things, so you can tie them to your shoe. Do tie them to your laces.
Yes.
Don't try and lace your shoes through these holes in the chip.
It'll be a nightmare the other end. People, if you listen to the Berlin Marathon episode, hopefully we have saved you a great pain, but we will remind you again.
Apart from that, then you sort of leave the expo there and you go downstairs, and actually there's a back part where there's the ASICS merch is there. Now Meg, you know I love the merch, right?
Yeah, that is your time to shine. That's where star eyes, ready to go.
Didn't buy a thing.
I couldn't believe this. When Yimmy messaged me when he was there, and I was like, I don't believe it. Someone's got your phone.
I did not buy a single thing.
And that is saying something.
That is saying something. I mean, there's the usual things where you can go in and they give you these free gift bags, and there's like loads of real funky stuff in there. Like there's some this salt candy stuff, and then there's like they give you these bath salts as well. So there's lots of freebies, but it's all in Japanese and you can't quite work out what it's for.
If you can't tell, leave it till after the race would be my advice.
Yeah, just don't, I would say.
Have a little fun experiment once you've done the thing.
And Google Translate doesn't really help you. You take a photograph of it and you look on Google Translate, and it doesn't really help you. I got one packet and I thought, what is this? This must be electrolyte drink. And it turned out it was like it's strawberry flavor. And then when I did Google Translate it, it said bath salts.
Oh, he's just having a good old sip. You're that man in Lush who's trying to eat
who's licking the banana flavoured candle.
Yeah, they're licking the banana bath bomb. So that's not a real cupcake. Put it down.
So just be careful of the freebies that you get. So the merch is sponsored by ASICS.
Yep.
And there was, after being in 3 queues, and then you queue up to go and have your bib photo taken. That's really worthwhile. They've got, like all the other majors, they've got like a mock-up of the sort of start line, and you go and have your bib picture taken. And that's really, really good fun. Everybody just queues up in a really, really sort of polite way. They snake around and they get there. It's really compliant. And then you get to the ASICS thing. Now, this was where I think one of the biggest letdowns. There was a 2-hour queue just to get into the ASICS concession.
Oh my goodness.
So you remember you and I went to the New York one, and it was a bit of a free for all and a total bun fight. None of that, right? The Japanese do tell you that there are you get to this section of the queue, there's 2 hours to go. You get to this section of the queue, there's 1 hour to go. And they also very, very helpfully have a board with all of the merch on it.
Right.
Pictures of all of the merch, and it tells you what's sold out.
Oh, no, nothing more demoralizing when you got to the 2-hour mark.
Exactly. You get there and there's nothing left. Okay, so for the people who are the Boston runners who love the jacket, we'll talk about Boston in the next episode. I'm afraid there is no such thing as a finisher's jacket in Tokyo. So just deal with it, right? The second thing is they ran out of most of the merch, of the good stuff, by the end of day one. And I think it's because, and it's a bit like Nike with Chicago. ASICS only sponsor one, or the major sponsor for one major, and it's Tokyo. And they don't produce a lot. And there's nowhere else in town where you can get any merch. It's all at the expo. So no going down to like the Adidas store or the ASICS store or Under Armour or wherever, like you've got in other races where you can actually pick up merch elsewhere. There's nowhere else does it. Not like Berlin where you get everywhere in town sells the Adidas merch.
Yeah.
You only have that concession, and the good news is they tell you when stuff's sold out, so you don't even bother wasting your time queuing up. I left there and didn't buy anything. You then go downstairs, and this is like the main hall of the expo, which is again really weird. And the first half of the hall is dedicated to all these non-commercial stands. So there's some charity stands there. There are some stands which are talking about running in other places, etc. But the whole place feels like it's some sort of health assessment clinic. These like whiteboards. Yeah, it's not the color that you get in, when you go to New York and in London, even, where there's lots of color. It's almost like a very, very clinical sort of guide through this part of the hall where there just stands with tables with white tablecloth, plastic tablecloths on them, and people stood behind them promoting goodness knows what. It was just really just a bit sad, really uninspiring. There was no like stage where there were big presentations about to inspire you, like in London. It's very, very runner centric. And then you get downstairs, and then finally you get into a bit where they're selling stuff, right? And I remember there was a place that sold gels and stuff, and it was like one of those really, really small market stalls where it was just really tight. And I was surprised that, given the COVID restrictions, they were allowing people to get so bunched together.
Yeah.
And it was like a bun fight in that one small stall. There was one, the only shoe manufacturer I took any notice of was Saucony, because I run in Saucony. And even by then, it was right at the end, and I was just not that interested by the time I got there.
Queued out.
And the only other place was the Theragun stand was there. So I at least got a free sort of like Theragun massage gun on me.
It wouldn't be an expo without it.
Exactly. And I ended up walking out of there with my bib and my timing chip, and that was it. It was the least inspiring. And it was very disappointing. If you like the merch, Tokyo is probably not the race for you unless you go on Thursday.
Yeah. And also, I think I don't know whether it was different last year, but you can buy a shirt. I think they've extended it till the 19th of Jan. You can buy a special Tokyo shirt for like $45. But I think that even sold out early last year.
I ended up
going.
Yeah, I mean, they had the charity shirt as well. So if you run for a charity, there's a special charity. And that was another line you needed to get into. And that looked ridiculously long as well. But I ended up getting a very, very colorful, very unflattering Tokyo, with all the bright colors on it. But it was the most horrible design. And I wore it the day after the marathon when I went to do my Medal Monday photos, and that was the last time I wore it.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, I think it'll be a different experience, the expo. I mean, after this description, I am excited to see it in the flesh. But absolutely remember your passport and ID photo. There is, from what I read, there isn't the same COVID restrictions anymore. So you don't have to worry about that unless something came last minute. Don't have to worry about that stuff. Make sure that you have a plan if you're going to the expo with a loved one, because there are areas where they can't be in there. So just pick where to meet them. Pick your line, basically. Pick what lines are worth it. And just make sure you get that done by Saturday, as I say, because you can't do that on the day. But yeah, thank you for the extra info there, because that's going to help a lot of people for sure, and hopefully save some people from some disappointment for our merch magpies on the day. So before the race, there is a 5K and warm up that you can do. It was cool to find out that they do have park runs in Tokyo as well. So, like, for example, is it Futa Kota Magawa, without insulting anyone, park run. So yeah, have a look. There are park runs available. There's a 5K warm up as well. So that's a little thing. Did you do any of the warm ups this time?
No, I didn't. The 5K is actually sold out. I did go on. There's a special name of it, and there's like Berlin has the sort of friendship run. But I did look at it, and I did note that the event the day before the friendship run has actually closed now, which is a real shame. But do go. Park run tourism is very, very popular now. So just go and find a park run. But it might actually help you feel a little bit more settled if you're still suffering from jet lag, to go out on that Saturday morning shakeout. Just shake out some nerves and prepare. Get the body moving, and just be in the right mindset to start the race on the Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're thinking of doing it in the future, sign up early for the official one. But I think it's really nice that they've got park runs there, so you've got options that you could just tag along to. So back to the race itself, we've talked a little bit about the fact that where it starts, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building, it ends at Tokyo Station, which is Gyoko Dori Avenue. So the race itself is a pretty flat one. We're talking 78 meters elevation, which is 256 feet, with a maximum elevation of 40.9. It's definitely not a rolling course, but there is slight rolling. I'd say from what I'm looking at, it's not as flat as Berlin, but it's probably on par with Chicago. Would you say that's fair to say? Haven't done it, Yumi?
Yeah, I would say that. You don't even notice it, to be honest. I mean, I'm looking at my Strava from last year. It looks like a massive sort of descent at the beginning, but actually it's over 10 kilometers. It's, you drop from 40 meters to zero, and it's over 15 kilometers by the looks of things. And then the incline is going from 25 kilometers to 32 kilometers, and it only goes up 20 meters in all of that space. So it's very, very gentle. As I said, it's very, very kind in terms of the elevation. So I don't think there's anything really to worry about in terms of, you can run a fast time there. Yeah. And I actually ran my PB there at the time.
Yeah, and again, not only was it a PB, we're talking about this was sandwiched amongst many marathons as well. So you should be super proud of yourself. Now, one thing, we were talking about this together before we started recording, something as a coach that I wanted to mention as well. And I know a few of you have messaged me about this concern. So what does stand out about the Tokyo Marathon course is it does have 4 major switchbacks, which is essentially where when you're running, you're seeing yourself, like later on in the course, you're going to be coming back on yourself. Now, from my coaching experience of this, what I would say is, that we're telling you, it's on the information. go into it with a good mindset. Your mindset, well, in any race, your mindset can either work for you or against you. So if you can look at that as a positive thing, right? You see the inspiration of the other runners going the other side, or you could let that really get to you, right? Thinking and in your head of like, where's that turning point going to be? Where's that turning point going to be? So I'd really say, like, in advance, those are coming up. Don't worry about it. Be curious. Enjoy the race. Don't let it get to you. You know they're going to be there. You're doing what you're doing. Don't worry about what anyone's doing the other side, and just be curious about what you're doing in your own race, and you'll get to there when you get there. You just need to carry on with your pacing strategy and what you're doing. What would you add to that, Yumi?
I think you're right. Look, 4 switchbacks, 60% of this course, you're running in switchback, which means you are seeing runners going the other way. So I think the first switchback is just after 10 kilometers. Now, the weird thing about the Tokyo course is that the switchback is almost like you're running on one side of the road versus someone running on the other side of the road going in the opposite direction. And it's only separated by some cones.
It's that Mario Kart again.
It is Mario Kart. I mean, there are just little, they're not even big cones. They're little cones, not even big barriers. They're just little cones. Now, I did see someone at the first switchback is just after 10 kilometers, but you actually see runners coming the other way from about 9.5 kilometers. And I did see someone cut the course. They cut I didn't get their number or whatever, but actually, you know what? A few hundred meters later, there were some timing mats. There are timing mats every 5K. So he would have missed the timing mat. So I reckon he would have been disqualified. But I did see someone. You can, if you want to, just jump on the other side and run the other way.
Just not worth it, folks.
It's just not worth it, right? And actually, that's dishonest. And I wouldn't, I don't think anyone listening to your podcast, Meg, would be somebody who would do that anyway.
I'm not even worried about that for a second.
Your first one is at, as I said, just after 10 kilometers. Your second switchback is then around 19 kilometers, just before halfway. Then you're about 23.5, 24 kilometers before you get to that third switchback. And then the last switchback is the cruelest one of all, and I'll come to why it is. It's right at the end of the race. It's about 37 kilometers is the last switchback, but you are seeing runners going the other way for quite some time. I agree with you. Run your own strategy here. At one stage of the race, it can be a bit disconcerting because I saw the runners, the leading group pass me the other way. And then later on in the race, I was just completely blindsided by, are these people behind me? Are these people in front of me? But actually, I just said to myself, you know what? It doesn't matter if they're in front of you or behind you. Just get on with your race.
Yeah, exactly.
And once you've got that in your head, it becomes quite straightforward. As I always say, get your head into the race. Don't let the race get into your head.
Exactly.
Right? And this is what you need to do for Tokyo. Before I went to Tokyo, I couldn't stand running in switchbacks. I went to Tokyo, and you know what? I don't mind switchbacks at all now. I went to Boston and I didn't like hills. And I came back from Boston and I don't mind hills now, right? So if there's anything that's going to cure you of your fear of switchbacks, Tokyo Marathon is just that, right?
Yeah.
It is, in terms of the course, it is in a very confined part of the city. And I would say this about the Tokyo Marathon. It doesn't have the buzz and the excitement leading into it like the other majors, right? So I'm going to contrast this with Boston particularly, because Boston, the finish line is permanently on, Boylston Street, right? You can be months away from the marathon. You go to Boylston Street, you can see the finish line of the Boston Marathon. They don't even set up the start line gantry for the Tokyo Marathon till the morning of the marathon. And I know this, but in Berlin, you see these videos of them marking out the Adidas fleece stripes.
Excited.
And they show you the Berlin, the Brandenburg Gate and where they've built the gantry, the start-finish gantry, and none of that, right? So it's almost like the Tokyo Marathon is an event that happens to the city, and they want it to be they don't want the mess of it all, and
Yeah.
they want it all over and done with as
Clean,
quickly as
efficient,
possible.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I went with a friend of mine to the Tokyo Metropolitan Building to look at where the start line was the day before. We were doing a recce.
Yeah.
We must have walked around there 7 or 8 times, like a couple of Muppets, right? We couldn't find anything. And the next day it was right there where we strolled past there. And, because, they hadn't actually built it till that Sunday morning, we just didn't know where the start line was. So you don't get that sort of buzz, and it's in a quite confined part of the city. But that does mean you are in switchback for about 60% of the course.
Yeah.
I say just get into the race and just deal with it.
Yeah. And again, as well, like, this information, so go into that, it, you can make it work to your advantage. And also you'll probably have a little bit less than that by the time you listen to this, but we're 8 weeks out. Like, incorporate some of this stuff in training. None of my clients, none of the athletes that I work with are ever shocked in a race, because we always look and prepare for different options. All right, if there's a change in weather, we've discussed it, we've practiced it. So think about these things now. Don't worry about these things now. Just think, what would your plan be? So we're already giving you that information. You can expect the switchbacks, they're there. Don't worry about it. You're doing your own race. It doesn't matter what someone else is doing the race.
Yeah.
You just enjoy your race. Don't let it get to you, would be our advice there. So, and also bringing back to what you mentioned at the start, Yemi, it might be a good time to mention about the congestion that you said about on the course.
Yeah. So like I said, 38,000 runners, say, all over the line in less than 1 hour, right? Rolling start. There are, 8 or 9 different start pens. You have to go to your start pen. They are very, very strict about that. They will check your bibs.
It's on your bib.
And like I said, one of my words is compliant. There are rules for everything. And Japanese culture is everyone knows the rules and follows the rules. There are no exceptions. So you get into your start pen, and actually it starts free flowing quite quickly, and you all end up on this main straight. And then you run past the start line, and there's no breaks between each wave. Not like New York, where you've got the whole sort of like pomp and circumstance of, the band playing and all that sort of stuff. It starts and everyone goes. Gun time is at 9:10. But that does mean that you've got a lot of bunching at the start. Mm-hmm. Now, you and I, we talk about this a lot, Meg, and we say always, always, always start slow.
Yeah.
And it took me, and I watched back my Instagram news stories, and I put them into Tokyo Marathon. Anyone interested, if you go onto my Instagram, scroll through on my highlights videos, and you'll see one of them's Tokyo Marathon.
It'll be linked in the show notes to Yumi.
Yeah, I'll send you a link, yeah. It took me 9 miles to find space.
Wow.
Right, but I used all of that congestion to my advantage, because it slowed me down. And you know what, Meg? When I look back at my splits on Strava, I ran the most even race of any of the marathons I've ever done. I've yet to hit that negative split, but I got pretty damn close in Tokyo. I ran the first half in 2:20. I ran 4:45. So I ran 5 minutes slower in the second half compared to the first half. And the second half, I was jeffing.
Amazing.
Right. So use the congestion to stop you from going too fast. And I'll share one story with you. A very good friend of mine, she was in the pen behind me, 3 miles in. She blazed past me. And I thought, hang on a minute. Yeah. She and I have a very, very similar marathon PB. Both of us in Berlin, both 4:58 or something, 4:57. She might have been a minute, 2 minutes faster than me. She came blazing past me. And I thought, ooh, she's going a bit quick. 16 miles, I caught her and I breezed past her when she looked like she was struggling. And so use that congestion to your advantage. It does. The course is wide, but because it's quite a compressed area, the marathon routes across quite a compressed area, it does mean there's lots and lots of people, and you just don't weave. Just take your time, run your strategy. And you will find some space towards the end of towards the middle and towards the end of the course. It just takes a bit of time to clear.
Yeah, and I know I haven't done the race yet, but that would be my biggest advice for this, for the whole trip. Have a strategy. we're giving this information hopefully to actually empower you, inspire you. None of this stuff will worry. Go with a strategy. You don't have English as the first language there, so you know that before you go somewhere, you've got to have a bit of a plan. Same with the race as well. You know there's going to be switchbacks. You know there's going to be congestion. Use it to your advantage. And the fact that, as I say, Yimi said, 9 miles worth of congestion, actually, he made work in his favor and he got a PB on the day. So use this as like motivation, have a little bit of a strategy and you'll be just fine. So talking about that start line, you've got the start block and entry gate on your bib. You'll also have a package truck number if you have paid for dropping off your, your bag for the day. Remember your throwaway layers, because I think it is at least 30 minutes at the start line. However, with the Japanese, I believe you will have to put it in the designated areas. They're very strict about littering, but I don't know if that was different for your year, Yumi.
No, and I'm glad you brought it up because they are absolutely passionate about people putting stuff in the bin.
Yeah.
Right. If you go to Tokyo, when you walk down a street and let's say you've eaten a chocolate bar and you've got the wrapper in your hand, there are no bins.
No.
But Tokyo is so clean because they have a culture where everyone takes their stuff home with them. Everyone takes their litter home with them. There's nowhere to throw anything away. People have just gotten used to just taking stuff, and people don't leave and litter anywhere. If you're caught littering, dropping gel packets on the ground, and you're caught by a marshal, you can be disqualified. But there are plenty of people with bags. There's almost like an obsession with people having bags.
Bag people all over.
Clear bags. Yeah. And you basically, last year there was some confusion. I'm glad you mentioned the language as well, because the language, the problem with the instructions, the runner's handbook comes out at the start of February. So and this information will be in there, I'm sure. They said at the last year, don't bring any, for us last year, there was no bag drop unless you were charity, right? But this year you've got bag drop, right?
So this year you have to pay for it if you want to do it.
Well, I think that fair enough. But last year there wasn't even a bag drop. And then they said, you can't bring any clothes at the start. And hang on a minute, it's going to be like 9 degrees in the morning. If I looked at the temperature of the races in the last few years, the average is around 11 degrees for the race.
Yeah.
So it is cool, and it's slightly early. It's very early in March. So you've got to have some layers, but there are plenty of bins.
Yeah.
You don't have to use a designated one. You just have to use into your pen. You just have to put it. I mean, right by the start, there was these big hoppers where you could put stuff. And actually, during the race, you had these people stood in the middle of the course with big clear plastic bags. And there's one thing I will share with you, Meg. Quite a funny story. Despite the congestion, I didn't have any problems running into any other runners. What almost tripped me up, so I almost fell flat on my face, was I was running along and a volunteer ran onto the course right in front of me.
Oh my goodness.
To pick up a gel wrapper to put in a bin.
I thought like the gel usually gets you out by slipping, but no, you slipped over the volunteer that went to get the packet.
I almost tripped over a volunteer picking up somebody else's dropped gel packet, and it was almost like it was the most urgent thing that person had to do at that moment was to pick up that gel packet.
I think it was.
So yeah, but please don't be. I always say, don't be a gel end.
Yeah.
Right. Keep your gel wrappers. Put them in your pocket. Put them in your shorts or whatever. When you see somebody with a big bin liner, then put it in there. It wasn't like Chicago. Remember where there was debris everywhere with clothes discarded. Very, very tidy at the start. Very, very clean. As I said, it will be the cleanest course you've ever run. So I'm glad you mentioned the sort of like clothes at the start. There was some confusion last year when they said don't bring them. Then they changed their mind and said, oh, no, you need to bring some warm clothes.
Yeah.
And another example of Another example of the sort of language issue is if you look at the instructions from last year's handbook, it says there are certain things that you can't bring.
Yeah.
Right. So it says you can't wear a hydration vest, for example. But it says, but bring a rucksack that you can run in to bring your dry clothes.
There's some translation issues there. Yeah.
Exactly. It's lost in translation. It literally is that film where there's certain things they say you can have and then you can't have. So you've got to be very, very careful about reading the rules and just asking, by all means, ask questions if you've got any concerns. Another one was, so you are not allowed to wear hydration vests on the course. It does actually say no canteens, water bottles, plastic bottles, cans, and other such containers are allowed. Right? Now, I think that is more of a try not to have lots of plastic water bottles being discarded. But having said that, they do have water bottles inside the start line area.
Right, because this was going to be my question, because I heard, I'd read that you can't bring food or it can only be empty water bottles coming into the start line, but once you're in the start line, there is food and drink available. Yes. Is that correct?
Yes. So from last year, it says you're allowed to have some unopened commercially available items, drinks, boxes, cartons, aluminium foil pouches. So you get to see them in these Japanese stores. I didn't try one. Yeah. And you buy they have these like energy, like they're almost like in those foil like Capri Sun.
Right.
But smaller.
Look like it's going up to space with you.
Yeah, it looks like it's exactly that. Yes, it looks like something you find on a space rocket. Yeah. NASA would use or something. Yeah. But they have to be smaller than 250 milliliters.
Okay.
Right. So, but they sell them in the shops. But you can have 3 of those, for example, but you just can't have a 500 milliliter one. Right. Sure. And I think that you're not allowed plastic water bottles. But I did take, because I'm a Tailwind user.
I do, because that's what I was going to ask you. What did you do?
So I took a soft flask, and I'll see if I've got one in the running cupboard. I must have one somewhere.
The cupboard.
I have got one somewhere, but I took 2 soft flasks in with me, both empty. I took the Tailwind packets. With me, and I mixed them with the water. And actually, you know what? They checked me at security going into the start pen. I had my water bottle, my silicone soft flasks there. They were 500 ml ones. They looked at them. They were fine with them. And the lady in the start pen even poured the water into my soft flask for me while I mixed my Tailwind. How nice was that? Exactly. Right.
So I think you can bring the bottles, but they have to be empty.
Empty. Right, yeah. They have to be empty. You can't bring the fluids with you, but there's plenty of water inside the start line. The other thing, as we always talk about, because we always do on these podcasts, toilet situation.
Yes, we runners, we love to talk about toilets and poo. So let's do it.
Do you know what? So clean. Unreal in terms of how clean they were.
As a runner, if you've ever done a big marathon, you have earned to experience some clean portaloos at least once, because I firmly believe when the world does end, it will start in a portaloo at the start of one of those marathons. So that's a delight. I'm very much looking forward to a clean portaloo experience.
So amusing though, because all of the public toilets in Tokyo are super clean. Even the ones in the metro stations that, they all have these toilets that have these toilet seat cleaning things that happen. And
like the electric ones that...
Yes, you press a button and it warms the seat and it cleans the seat for you. Well, not quite that on the portaloo.
Maybe this year, who knows?
There was one very amusing picture, and I did take a photograph of it, and I have to share it with you at some point, where it has instructions on how to use the portaloo, because a lot of Japanese toilets, public toilets, are those pads on the ground, yes, a hole in the ground with the feet pads. And there was one.
You need to look out for the Western loo. That's
exactly right.
There are two different signs. Yeah.
Look out for the Western toilets, but all the portaloos are Western style, like we'd expect in a Western portaloo.
Just make sure you're in the right line.
But there was a very amusing instruction panel in the toilets, and it says, "This is how you sit on this toilet." And there's one that says, with a big cross through it, was somebody looking like they're squatting over the toilet bowl. I did laugh, and I thought to myself, if you haven't sussed out how to use a portaloo by now, then you've got bigger problems than
yeah. Don't even worry about the cutoffs.
Exactly. Other stuff I would say is, once you get started, you're on this course. It's not the most inspiring course, Meg.
I thought you were going to say it's not the most inspiring toilet.
No. I'll come to the on the course toilets in a moment, actually, because there is something I'd say about that. Mm-hmm. The course itself is very, very samey. Tall buildings everywhere. Right now, the other thing that you just need to just deal with is that your GPS will go crazy.
Right. That's
because
great.
There are so many tall buildings. Your GPS is going to jump in, jump out, and it's a bit like Canary Wharf in London, right? So at one stage, I thought I was at 15. I crossed the 15-mile marker. Again, it's on my highlights reel on Instagram. I got to 15 miles, and the mile markers and the kilometer markers are quite hard to see. They're quite small.
So do they? Because I'd read that it was only kilometers apart from halfway was a mile.
Kilometer. Okay, they were So they had some mile mark. There was kilometer markers, but mile markers every 5 miles.
Right. Okay, that's better than I thought.
But they were really, really small. really, really small.
Where's Wally with the mile markers?
And I ran past the 15-mile marker, and I looked at my watch, and I thought, my watch is telling me I run 15 and a half. Now, I know I weave a little bit, but I wasn't weaving that much. I've never been that far out. And I thought, wow, I'm half a mile out. Crazy. So deal with that.
No
the other
blue
thing
line? Is that correct? No blue line?
I could. The
no, so I read there's
wide at one point.
No, I read that there's no blue line. So if you didn't see it either, then that still follows. So no blue line to follow. So don't waste your time looking.
Don't waste your time looking for it.
Yeah,
because you won't find it. In fact, in terms of the actual course itself, I mean, there's some stuff that you can look out for, and there are so when you get to around 19 kilometers, if you look up, you'll get to see the Tokyo Skytree, which is one of 2 towers there. When you get to sort of 24 kilometers, there's this big shrine, and it looks beautiful. I've got a really, really funny picture of me running past that shrine with one of a handful of fancy dress costume, which was a guy in a panda. He didn't have the rest of it. He had the proper runner kit on, and he had like a panda head on. Like the Masked Singer, he had this panda
got a bit lost
on
the way to the studio.
Yeah, and so there wasn't a lot of that sort of fancy dress stuff. And then later on, you get to sort of another shrine towards the end. I would say the other thing that I mentioned earlier, the most cruel switchback is when you get to about just over 20 miles, and I was beginning to hurt at 20 miles. So sort of like 32, 33 kilometers, you actually then see, with 10 kilometers to go, you see a sign that says 1 kilometer to go. And this is why I say it's the cruelest switchback. You see the sign, and this hope builds up inside you, in your chest, thinking like, I'm almost there. And it's not. You've got another 10 kilometers to run out and back.
Sign,
And I would say in that last, actually, here's a top tip. When you get to about 35 kilometers, and I love talking about this, right? The photographers are all the way down that road, okay? And there are like multiple of them. So just put, if there are 10 photographers, get one of them with a good photo.
Dry your tears from the 1 km fell sign and get your show face on.
I got some brilliant race day photos just going down that bit.
You always do. That is a skill you have. You know where a photographer is.
Other things to point out, aid stations.
Yep.
15 of them.
Every 2 to 3 km, roughly?
Well, they start off, one is basically 5K, the next one's 11K, then 15K, then 20, and thereafter it's every sort of like 2.5K.
Yeah.
About every 2 miles or so till you get to the end. There are 15 of them, and all of them have water. And I'm just having a quick look here. 9 of them have...
Water seems to be every 5 km, is that correct?
Water is at every single aid station, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, and then it's 22, 25, 27, 30. Then you also have a sports drink as well.
I love this sports drink.
Sports drink.
They have it in Thailand too.
Do they?
Yeah.
Well, you will know.
Pocari Sweat.
Pocari Sweat.
It is not actually sweat, despite the name. So don't let that put you off.
It's unique. There's nothing else I've ever tasted. Is
it like a mild grapefruit flavour, like a salty mild grapefruit? Is that how you describe it?
I remember tasting it, doing a taste test, and I did it on my Instagram feed, and I was like, it's like some guy called Pocari. We found his sweaty socks and we squeezed them into a bottle and added some sugar. It's salty but sweet, but it's an experience. I would say get a bottle from any vending machine, and they have them in Tokyo subway stations, metro stations. Buy a bottle of it, just test it before race day. It's unique.
Yeah. Exactly. So again, you know what to expect. So when you land, get a few bottles and just give it a go, just so you can get used to it. Again, because don't try anything new on race day if you can avoid it. So again, if you haven't been able to, it's not going to be the end of the world if you're trying Pocari Sweat for the first time in the race, but it is an unusual experience. So if you can get it earlier, because it is so, like Gatorade and stuff, you can kind of get used to, a Lucozade, that's pretty the same world over. This is a little bit different. So if you can get one when you land and just get used to the taste a little bit, always helps. And as we advise every time with the rest of like fueling, don't try anything new on the day. Don't
100%.
If you do decide to buy something from the expo, by all means, get some shiny new things. Don't change up new clothes on the day, and don't try anything new. At the aid stations, I did read there are some. So you've got the things you'd expect, like oranges, bananas, but they do have some unusual stuff, right? I've read like bread that sometimes can have chocolate or dried fruit in. Did you have any?
No, it says, so the things they gave out last year, the sweet jellied azuki bean paste.
Yep, I saw that.
It did not look appealing at all, right?
Again, maybe not best to try new, especially if you've got a sensitive tongue. Stick to the things you know.
There was 2 places where they were giving out glucose. There were 3 places giving out salt candy. There's like a weird...
Yeah,
it's almost
I
like
read
an
that.
electrolyte. Yeah, it was almost like salty candy, they called it. And then there was a calorie mate jelly at one of the stations as well, which I didn't go anywhere near, as I followed the rule of nothing new on race day.
I'd also heard pickled plums. Were they there? I've seen that on the list. That's been there in the past. So you never know. The pickled plum might take a comeback. But exactly what Yumi's saying, try and stick to what you know.
Stick to what you know. I took my piece of flapjack, homemade flapjack that I'd taken with me, Tailwind, and a couple of Morton's gels for the boost. And that was absolutely fine. The other thing I would say, toilets on the course. Okay, this is the weirdest thing ever. Right? It's almost like they didn't want you to see the toilets on the route. So you're running along and you go, oh, I need the loo. And it says toilet, and there's a sign that says toilet. And you've got to run almost like 200 meters away from the course to get to. Yeah. So a friend of mine said, luckily I did not need the loo on the, unlike I did in Amsterdam. Bit of emergency, another story for another time. But in Tokyo, he said my friend Ash, he said he like ran 250 meters, like one city block over to get to the toilet. And then he had to run all the way back to get back to the course again. So he added on half a kilometer just for going to the toilet. So just be prepared for that. If you really, really need to go to the loo, make sure you go at the start where there's lots of them. They're very, very clean. And on the course, if you can avoid them, then great. Not because they're not clean, it's just because they're so far away.
But they will be Western style. They will be Western style toilets for you.
On the course, yeah. The crowd we've talked about already. This is the weirdest experience. Silent disco were the words that I used before on this one, and it is true. There's loads of people. They're all there, but they're all just very. The Japanese are very reserved people, so they just stand there and they politely clap. In fact, the volunteers were making more noise than the crowd. The volunteers,
especially if they're tripping over people to get litter.
Well, you know what? Exactly, right? You get to an aid station, and the aid station people are like, "Woo, go for it! You're doing well," and they're broken English, and they go, "Woo!"
Yeah, love the effort.
Absolutely, I did run past a group of like 20 people dressed as Super Mario.
Amazing.
It brought a smile to my face.
Your boy would have loved that.
You know what? He would have absolutely been beside himself. It was so fun. It's a shame I didn't get a picture of it, actually. A friend of mine did, so I might just show him the picture. The other thing I would say, so the crowd is weird, but the camaraderie on the course, surprisingly good.
Great.
And I'll tell you why. I think it's because of the language barrier. And there's so many Japanese runners. All the Western runners sort of like get together and they all end up chatting. And I had one of the best moments, and I've got to mention it because I ran with Sports Tours, as you know, and they were incredible as getting us all to the start line because they put on like big coaches and they took they do so well. They really looked after us. And I met these guys only a couple of days earlier, Lee and Rich at breakfast, and we were just chatting about how many majors, and we all ended up finishing in Boston together. A couple of months later. It was brilliant. Awesome. But I was running along, and I think Lee had been injured, and his training hadn't gone to plan, so he was behind me. And I was running on one of the switchbacks, and I'm running along, and I'm chatting to somebody, and I suddenly hear this "Yimmy!" And I look up, and it's Lee and Rich running the other way, and I'm filming a video for Young Lives versus Cancer at the time, and I ended up high-fiving Rich on the way back, sort of thing, and I just happened to catch it all on video, and it was just really, really fun. It was like a really uplifting moment, and I saw some other guy who had an NYPD top on, so I was like, "Oh, you over from New York?" And I sort of talked to him about my New York experience.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. So, and then like I was doing my video, and then two ladies from Atlanta turned up, and they ran with me they were jeffing, and I was jeffing, and another friend of mine, Mina, who I met in Tokyo, she was running for Sports Tours as well. She was jeffing, and we kept on passing each other and kept on high-fiving each other as we went past. So the camaraderie amongst sort of like
the runners,
the runners, it was actually really, really good, despite the fact that there didn't seem many charity fancy dress or anything like that.
It's always a shame. That always makes me sad, but that's again just my reasons for running, our reasons for running.
Same with me.
But love to hear that. That's awesome. That's something for everyone to look forward to, myself included. I love a bit of race camaraderie, and that we can all stick together with that as well. And that's at the end of the day, when we're all grey, old and wrinkly, it's the memories you look back on and the bonds that you've made. So love to hear that. With the medical aid stations, I'd read that they start at every 5 km and then every 2 km from halfway. What sort of things can people expect at the aid stations for the Tokyo one? Did you get a look?
I didn't really see that many of them, actually. I think there were only 4 that were listed in terms of where they were on the course.
There seem to be a few listed, hopefully this year. Again, something that we didn't mention at the start, we were talking before, is they do give they don't give a lot of information before the race till quite late. I'd say out of all of the majors, it's probably the least and I'm running the thing, it's the least information I've been able to find out early. So they don't release the official guide for runners until February. And bear in mind, most people are landing at the end. I'm landing at the end of February for the race. That's definitely something that hopefully could be improved in the future. There's not much info. So from what I saw, they seem to be fairly regular. I read every 5 km and then from halfway 2 km. But
I think that's actually more of the the medical aid stations. Yes, actually, you're right. Maybe right. It
was a COVID
I'm just looking
thing.
At this. Then. Yeah, no. Actually, I'm looking at I just turned I just looked at as you were talking. I was just going through my my notes from last year, and I've just found the Tokyo Runner's Handbook here, and it does say 5, 11, 15, 21. You're right, every 5k and then halfway there's every 2 kilometers.
Hopefully this podcast can help, but don't panic. Extra information is coming, because I was like, I'm looking like earlier than most because for the podcast, but I'm running the thing and there's not as much info, but that is coming. Rest assured. So medical aid stations there, I'm imagining it's got the typical stuff that you could expect. Is there like a Vaseline equivalent in?
Yeah, I think
that's usually the MVP, isn't it, at the medical aid station? But again, they're efficient. They want a safe race, so they will look after you all the same. Now, finish line. I've heard, Yemi, that post-finish line, there is a bit of a long walk, but I compare everything now to the New York Marathon finish line.
No, there isn't.
There isn't. Fantastic. That makes me happy.
When you compare it to New York, everything's a short walk now.
Exactly. Well, that's my thing. So I'm like, normally I'd say, is it a long walk? From 0 to New York, what are we saying?
Look, I think it's nowhere near New York. Look, you can walk to the metro station. There are 3 metro stations, all within a short walk, 10 minutes sort of walk. And then I actually had the coach option. So looking to see if your hotel will do the coach option to take you to the start. And what you end up with is another sticker. And you're supposed to stick the sticker to you somewhere. And it actually gives you a bus ride to all the major hotels in all the major cities across Tokyo. Because Tokyo's, it's a bit like London and the boroughs and New York and the boroughs. They have each area has like the major hotels, and they have buses taking people back, and it's very, very efficient. And I found that by far the easiest way, and those buses were right there in the car park to the Imperial Palace, so that was easy.
And if not, you're finishing right at the train station, basically.
You're finishing right at the train station, so it's 10-minute walk to the train station, so it's not that far. It is complicated though when you get the runner's handbook. Don't freak out at there's 9 different exits, and there's 4 this way and 4 that way.
I saw an old one, and there was just colours galore. I was like, oh goodness! I was like, I'll look at that later.
And that is a very standard Japan, Tokyo thing. You get lots of colour, and it's almost too busy for you to actually find the information that you want. But just, I think the main thing is there's a grey one, which is the middle. I just plump for the middle and just keep on walking, and you will get to the metro station. It's actually quite straightforward.
Right. And what about the finish line itself? I know we said like you've got that nasty switchback near the end, but like is it a big finish line? Is it a fair finish line? You know, some of these things when you get to like the 500-meter mark and you're like, God, that was the longest 500. Like Chicago, I thought you had that little bit of uphill, but I thought Chicago finish line came quite quickly when you see it.
It's quite weird because you do the switchback, you come past, and you get to that 1 kilometer to go, and you almost run into like a park, and it feels like you've walked onto like one of those business estates, and it's quite wide. And I remember running down there and thinking, "Where's the finish line? Where's the finish line? Where's the finish line?" And you get to the last corner, and then you turn, and then the finish line's right there.
See,
it's almost like.
I think that's nice in a way, though, because when you see it, then you're there. Sometimes the ones where you see it and you think, oh, great, it's there. And it just seems to be getting further away.
So far away, like Berlin.
Yeah, exactly.
Chicago, no, Tokyo's not like that at all. Tokyo is, you run along, you turn left into that last straight for that one last kilometer, and it's quite a wide bit of road, and then it gets a bit narrower, and then there's like a left turn, and then sort of like 30 meters, if I remember rightly, just from memory, there's a last corner, you turn the corner, and then there's a finish line, and it's not like a big archway or anything. There's like there's a bit of signage on one side and a signage on the other, and it's quite a wide finish line, so you kind of like, and quite busy. So it's not like the epic finish that you get in like a New York or a Boston.
Any like finish line poses people should be doing, or is the photographers later?
I think actually they're on the line, but my finish line poses, because it's so wide, you end up with lots of people around you, and you don't get a really good. It's not like London or Chicago.
I thought you were going to say you're in like panorama.
Yeah, no. Well, it's almost like it's like a whole, a group picture of like 100 runners, and you're in amongst them doing your thing. And being a shorter runner, of course, I'm going to be hidden in the crowd.
Yeah.
But I think that it's not like Chicago, where we got some awesome finish line photos. It's not like that at all. Yeah. I would say get your sort of like final straight photos on the final straight. And my one from my Tokyo post on Instagram is one of my favorite race photos, and it's taken on that last straight.
Love it. So yeah, use the final straight for your best photos. I think there's photographers afterwards at the end as well. What about like the question people be wanting to know? We're all magpies at the end of the day. What's the goodie bag like? What goodies do you get post race? So
post race, you get like a poncho.
Yes,
you get a foil blanket. You get a foil blanket with Tokyo Marathon on it. That's quite cool. I've still got mine somewhere. Of course I have. Right. And then you also get the weirdest thing. It's like a beach towel.
I heard it. Yeah, it's like a Tokyo towel.
Yeah, it's like but it's not a towel. It's got like poppers on, so you can like put your arms in it, and it's like got a hood.
Oh, so it's like a towel dress.
It's like a towel with a hood.
Okay, great. We'll take it.
But
we'll take whatever we're given. We love a freebie.
And it was warm, and I've not used it since. Yeah. And it's like, I guess it's like one of those. What are those things called? Those dry robes. It's kind of like a small mini dry robe sort of thing. It's got a hood.
Top dry robe.
So yes, you do. That was the freebie. I can't remember getting any. I think there might have been a banana or something that was immediately afterwards.
Standard. Yeah,
fairly standard. The whole. I trained for 16 weeks to get a free banana, sort of thing.
And a crop top dry robe.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
I think the last things I would say, other event tips. Yep. Okay, I'm just going to go through a few of these. Number one, Japanese culture, very, very polite, very, very rules-based, very, very compliant. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Crossing the roads. Nobody jaywalks in Tokyo.
Good to know, because I am terrible about that.
Don't jaywalk.
Won't do it.
The police will stop you. When you it's the middle of the night, it's 11 o'clock at night, you stood on a road, the light's on red for pedestrians, right? But no cars. You wait until it turns green.
Yep, fair.
Right? It's as simple as that, right? Everyone does that. Everyone follows the rules. Very, very clean. Even the toilets are clean. I mentioned there are no bins anywhere. I even saw on the metro station at night, there were people cleaning behind the advertising hoardings with like big like
You'd never
dusters.
See that on the underground, would you?
You never get to see that in London underground. It never gets cleaned in 10 years, right? You look behind there and there are rats.
I was going to say the rats are doing better. They're cleaner than
right. So exactly. So it's very, very clean. Do not litter anywhere. Do not litter on the course. Gels, extra clothes, whatever. If you're caught littering, you will get disqualified. So don't do that.
There's lots of areas. Yeah. I also read for Japan. Am I right in? I've had a few people tell me when you're out and about in Japan, especially as a tourist, you do need to have your ID on you because you could get checked.
Yes, you can get checked. So take your ID with you. That's true.
Everywhere you go.
I always had it anyway.
Yep.
My other top tip is when you get to your hotel, take a photo or a screenshot of your hotel name and address in Japanese.
Smart. Yeah.
And if you ever need to get a taxi, half these taxi drivers, most of the taxi drivers don't speak English. Show them your phone and they'll see the address and they'll put it into their GPS and they'll take you back.
That's going to help a lot of people, I think.
And lots of these taxis, if you do get a taxi, don't touch the door handles. They get really, really upset because they have automatic. Well, they press a button, they automatically open for you.
Magic.
Right. So there's that. That's the other thing. The language barrier is very, very real. Mm-hmm. And even in big shops that I went to ask people for help with something. And very, very few people, even young people who you'd thought, who studied English or whatever, very, very few people actually speak English. So don't expect that. Mm-hmm. And on the race, don't expect your name to be called very often because, again, one, they're too polite to call people's names out and shout, and two, they can't read it anyway.
Yeah,
right?
Got to follow the rules of the silent disco.
It's silent disco continues. It's almost like Tokyo is like, it's a big hassle for them to put on the marathon and they just want it over and done with and cleaned up as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. Right. So just be prepared that there's not that sort of like, run up the buzz that you get in a Boston or in a Chicago. Yeah. But having said that, the food there is amazing.
I can't wait.
Right.
Do you know what? That's what, apart from obviously your company, we get on really well. It's one of the saddest things that I wasn't there to experience that with you because you always have great suggestions. And also that's the type of food you love anyways. So like to experience it in Japan with you, that would have been great. I'm sad.
It was incredible. Vegetarian, if you don't like, there's plenty of veggie stuff.
Great.
I would say my other top tip is to take some cash with you.
Okay.
Because the cash thing is very, very real. It's almost like they had like the Oyster card system, and I'll come on to this in a second, way before, and it's like Hong Kong as well, where they've got the octopus card, where their travel card you could put money on and they could use those travel cards. But the latest version of Apple Pay or whatever hasn't quite taken off in Japan yet. Yeah, right?
So more money, more actual money.
Take some actual cash with you because some of the best places to eat, Meg, are these these little restaurants, little cafes at the side of the road. And the way you go in, you choose the meal that you want off this vending machine, and you put money in, and it often spits it out because it doesn't accept the note or whatever. And you press the button, and it sings this little tune to you, and it gives you this ticket. And you take the ticket inside the cafe, and you sit down in this seating area, and they bring you your food. It's amazing.
I'm such a curiosity is one of my top values. I'm so
You're gonna love it
for this.
You're gonna love it.
I'm gonna be
and I'll need to find the name of it. I had the best spaghetti carbonara outside of Italy in Japan the night before race day.
Yeah, please do share when you find it.
I'll try and find it. It was absolutely incredible. But every cuisine is available. Any budget, high budget, low budget, cheap eats or high end. You don't want to be eating too much rich food before the actual race anyway. The other thing I mentioned, these charge cards. Mm-hmm. There are two charge card systems out there. One's called Pasmo, and the other one's called Suica.
Okay.
And Suica, I'm just going to show this up to the screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see that.
That's the one I've heard of. Yeah, Suica.
Yeah.
Suica.
Yeah, Suica card. Suica, and Pasmo, Pasmo. You can go on to like Apple Pay and add it to your wallet first, and it's like empty. And what you do is you charge money onto it, so put like a £10 onto it, and that becomes you can use that on the metro without getting a credit card out to tap every single time. Western credit cards on Apple Pay won't work.
Okay. Great.
But Pasmo cards you can use in vending machines. You can use in lots of restaurants and stuff. They accept it, and and talking about restaurants, my last tip, and maybe I'll leave you with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Do not tip anyone.
Okay. So, which is really important because like so many of the majors are in America, and obviously that's completely like you're expected to tip for everything. So don't tip.
They see it as offensive.
Right. Very good to know.
Do not tip anyone. They do it for the love of doing it, and they do it with sincerity.
Which I love. I love that. And so, yeah, thank you for that, because we're going to save face from upsetting a lot of people there. Just quickly, any off the top of your head, like things that you were like, definitely see this sightseeing off the top of your head, like if you go in Tokyo?
I would say 2 things to go. Medal Monday, look, if you've got more time,
yeah,
right, go and take up one of those tours and go and see the monkeys that are sitting in those in the hot springs.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. I didn't have time to do that. That was a real shame, right? That would have been worthwhile doing. Inside Tokyo, I would say go to the Tokyo Tower, because the view from the Tokyo Tower is insane.
Right.
And then you also got the Eiffel Tower. You go to the Eiffel Tower thing. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
There's there's a sky tree there as well. Again, really, really good views. And just go and look at some of the temples and shrines and stuff, and go and visit some of those, because some of them are absolutely incredible. So It's too early. You're a month too early for the cherry blossom, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But there's plenty to go and also go to the junction, of course, Shinjuku Junction.
Yes, I think you're right.
Where it's just crazy. Oh, by the way, top tip for a medal photo.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the crossing, and I'm just going to look it up quickly because this is worthwhile doing. Mm-hmm. There's a Starbucks on that junction, and you go into Starbucks, go and buy yourself a coffee, and then sit in the window. Shibuya Crossing, that's what it's called. I was trying to remember. Mm-hmm. It's called Shibuya Crossing, and you see it where people just cross over the middle of the road, and it's like organized chaos. It is brilliant. But go and get a photo, a Medal Monday photo, looking out of the window in Starbucks of that crossing. It's absolutely amazing.
Best tip there. Love that. So everyone, hopefully this episode has been super useful. Thank you so much, Yumi, for doing their heavy lifting there, for having done the race before. It's so nice to hear your experience. And I was excited before. It's got me even more excited. Your race, make the most of it. As I say, all of the things we've shared today are not to worry you. They're actually to hopefully like get you feeling excited, get motivated. And like we said, have a strategy. It's a different culture, different language, and different race to what you're used to. As long as you have a strategy and you stick to your plan, you're going to have a fantastic race. Now, to finish off, we usually do the ranking out of 6, but I feel like we've done this a few times now. We know what it is. So and also I can't rank this one yet until I've done it. So we'll revisit it maybe for the Boston episode. But so what I wanted to do something a little bit different. Yumi is doing his incredible challenge this year, the 12 in 12 months for his 50th. And he is doing all 6 of the majors again, which I believe you will be in a very small club of people that have actually done that. So that's impressive in itself. You're already impressive because you've done the 6 majors in the shortest time frame because of the COVID changes. What I want to ask you, essentially, you've got a chance of redemption at all 6 races. If you were to pick with all 6 coming up again, what would you say is going to be your number 1 redemption race where you're like, I'm really looking forward to giving this another crack?
I'm going to say it's my ranked 6th race. It's New York.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be the case. Yeah. I'm excited for you though. I honestly think this is going to be a better experience. I'm
going to go and make my peace with the New York City Marathon.
Find your soul again when you left it.
I was pretty broken, and if you listen to the New York Marathon episode, you'll understand why. I promised my one of my Facebook group members who's a 26-year veteran, 26 times veteran of the New York City Marathon. And she actually said some feedback to us, Meg, which was, I said, oh, it's pretty controversial. I was really nervous about her feedback. And she listened to it. And then she came back almost straight away and said, nothing you've said in there is inaccurate.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
you are spot on. And it's one of the, the logistics is the worst thing. And you know what? This time, learn from experience, I'm not going to take the bus and get lost. Yep, I'm going to take the Staten Island ferry, right? And get there a bit later and have a bit more of a lie-in. I'm not going to bag drop and waste my time on the Saturday and then walk 20 blocks back to go and pick up my bag at the end.
You're going to pack your sunscreen.
Just in case, yeah.
Just in case. And also, those hills are coming to just make them work to your advantage. I'm actually genuinely really pleased that because even so, we both, it was a ranked lower race for both of us. I think I found it a little bit better than you had. So I'm actually really excited that you get to go back and give it another crack. I'm really excited for you.
I'm going to give it a crack and I'm going to report back. And the way I figured it is I'm running Tromsø, the Midnight Sun Marathon in June, and there's only 700 runners, Meg, for this whole race.
Yeah, and it's one of the best to do just because it's so unique.
I'm going to learn, get over my, having to do it in a very, very quiet, unsupported sort of atmosphere, more so than Tokyo because there's nobody there, apart from the end, I expect. But I got over my fear of hills in Boston. I got over my fear of switchbacks in Tokyo. I need to get over my fear of running in those bridges and stuff in New York. So that redemption is coming. And I'm going to go into it with an open mind, not set myself too high an expectation, and just go out there and just make my peace with it.
Yeah, the redemption race. Here it comes. Yeah. Well, there we go. Thank you so much to everyone who has listened and continues to listen to our episodes. We actually genuinely love doing them. We love hanging out. As hopefully you can tell, we're a bit goofy together anyway. But we genuinely love to do it. And if our experiences and knowledge can make the race a little bit easier for you, then job done. We're very happy. So please don't be strangers. Give us a message if you've listened to the episode. Enjoy it. Share it if you know anyone who's doing it. Please come and give me a wave at the start line in Tokyo. Let's use some of that race camaraderie. I'd love to hear from you. And that's star number 5 that we've covered, just Boston to go. So we'll have that coming in the near future. If you've got any questions or anything, or other races that you want us to cover as well, we've done quite a few between us, not just the marathon majors, then let us know. Have the best race. And we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Good luck, Meg. I'm supporting you all the way.
Yes, and I will have that Click Sergeant Young Lives versus Cancer now, as it's known. I'll be wearing that proud. That's what it's all about for me. So can't wait to wear the vest again.